What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Quarters Podcast. We got a fun one tuned up for you guys today. We're going to be talking about the four most improved teams after the 25 NFL draft. Who had the best draft, but how do they fit? We're going to be looking at full depth charts, offense, defense, their draft picks, kind of looking at just how they did and just in general. Of course, Randy threw his Raiders in here because he had to put his team in here. But we're going to have some fun kind of diving into how these GMs did, and also just talk about some strategy, just how scheme has changed. What did these player outlooks and some deeper guys. So now that we have a little bit more time this week, we can really go deep in round 6 and 7, guys that can really make a difference out there for your NFL franchises. So stick with us, and we'll be diving into that after the intro.
Before we get into all of that, we have to tell you about our 2025 rookie guide, which we released last week right after the NFL draft. It's got, I think, over 130 pages. It's got full scouting reports for every player that was drafted. We've got some UDFAs in there. So we'll get to talk about some of those players today. But if you want the full breakdown on all of these players, head to patreon.com/theDevyRoyale or theDevyRoyale.com to get the rookie guide. There's a lot of good stuff in it. A lot of good reviews so far. A lot of people are really enjoying it. So if you would like an advantage in your dynasty leagues, go to one of those sites.
We also got some haters, which I like too. That means we're doing something right. So that's the fun part. I love seeing the Luther Burden sucks comments when we have them at 107. So those are the fun ones that I like. But we definitely have got a lot of plugs there. If you're into just dynasty, it's not just a here's your strategy or here's your player. This is where we rank them. This is a strategy guide, right? Like, so I think, separate itself, and people don't do those. And I think it's hard. And the reason why people don't do them is because they're scared to put their takes out there, because they'd rather just give you rankings with no basis. Like that's easier. So we didn't do that. All right, let's get into teams. I cannot believe we're talking about these guys, but Arizona Cardinals, boys, they nailed their draft. I think they did a great job here. I'm going to kind of butcher the first. I'll go through their picks, probably butcher some names here. And then we'll kind of throw it to everybody here and kind of see what we think about their draft as a whole. But at 16, of course, this team made the list because they're Randy's and Christian's guy, Walter Nolan, got drafted there. Defensive tackle, great pick. I think it was a great value pick. Will Johnson, Michigan corner, falls to them in round 2, which could be the pick of the draft if he's healthy. Round 3, we got Jordan Birch, edge, and kind of defensive tackle, kind of hybrid guy out of Oregon. Round 4, linebacker Cody Simon at Ohio State. Denzel Burke, Ohio State, corner at round 5. Hayden Connor, offensive guard out of Texas, and Kyton Crawford, safety out of Nevada. Randy, generally speaking, as a whole, what do you think of this draft?
I mean, I enjoyed it. Simply, they spent a lot trying to. I mean, I've said it multiple times. They spent a lot of free agency a couple of years ago trying to reinvent this defense, especially the defensive line. Last year's draft, obviously taking Marvin Harrison early. They kind of tried to invest on that side of the ball. Now they're going back to the defense, trying to get this up to snuff where it needs to be. You got arguably the best D tackle in the class, if you're talking to me or Christian, and Walter Nolan. Will Johnson, arguably the best corner when healthy. And then Jordan Birch is perfect scheme fit for these guys. I mean, I think all three of us can agree if he was going to a 3-4 defense, this is a great fit. So he's going to be able to play inside, outside for them and be able to maneuver around. Cody Simon is a good cover linebacker, good at making the plays in the run game, and is a good blitzer. He's a good all-around. Nothing great of his game, but he's pretty good at everything, and I think he fits what they need to continue to be multiple in this set. So I just think it's a smart play, and then you get an upside corner who's, high floor coming into college and then never really excelled past that. If they can continue to see if they can get something out of him. They have a lot of slot corners on this team. Denzel Bird can play on the outside. It gives you a little bit more option, and a special teams guy, take upside shot, safety, and lineman later. I just think it's smart to reinvent the defense here and try and get cheaper as well. Obviously, you spent the money already. Now you can get some guys. If these guys can take over, you can save out some money and fill up all the rest of the holes you need, possibly at right tackle or left tackle next season. I just like how they reshape their team.
Yeah, I think that's the key component here. So some of these teams, we didn't talk about them as having the best draft in general. I think the Cardinals were a team that we mentioned as they were right on the brink of us putting them on the list last week. But the main thing here is they really attack that defense. And so they're putting a lot of faith in Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. to take a leap. And I think this is some faith in Trey Benson to be a nice number 2 back for them. But what they said is we need to get better on defense. We're going to attack that with almost every single pick. And the one pick that we're not, it's going to be a trench pick on the other side. So I think that's smart team building. And when you look at their depth charts, obviously the offensive depth chart didn't change a whole lot, but on defense, you can see how many of these players are maybe second on the depth chart. Walter Nolan, I think Will Johnson, when healthy, will be first on that depth chart, but Jordan Birch is arguably second or third as far as a rotational down defensive lineman. He's so versatile too. I think that was an excellent value pick in the 3rd round. Birch was a guy that when we started getting down to it at the very end of the process, there were some folks that said, well, Birch might go in the 1st. Like there are teams that really, really like him. Obviously that didn't come to fruition. And I think this is more the range that I expected him to be in, but I still think that that's a really great value pick. And like Randy mentioned, Cody Simon, I mean, especially down the stretch for that Ohio State defense, there are a lot of players on that Ohio State defense that were excellent players. But I would argue that really down the stretch after the Michigan game, no one was more important to that team than Cody Simon. So maybe Caleb Downs, but we'll talk about him.
Besides the 2 young stars.
Yes. But Simon was playing out of his mind to the point that like I had a grade on him. I watched those games live and I said, man, maybe I need to go back and adjust some things. Maybe he's a little bit better than I thought. And he still goes in round 4, but I think this is a player that's going to be on the field for them quite a bit, especially when you look at their linebacking room. So I just think they attacked it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, they addressed their defensive front, right? Because when you look at their defense, they ranked 27th in EPA allowed per rush in 2024. They looked at that and they said, hey, we got to get better up front. And Walter Nolan can do that. Jordan Birch, possibly, like you mentioned, can do that definitely. But I do want to go to the offensive side. So here's their projected depth chart on the offensive side here. So I do want to kind of I'll throw it out to Randy. I mean, there was a lot of people out there that thought they would draft a wide receiver. I mean, they even looked at it maybe being a wide receiver in round 1. I think I mocked him at Mecca. I think I got to give him a Mecca in our last mock that we had, which when you look at their wide receiver room here, Marvin Harrison Jr. is their X. We know that. Trey McBride is their number 2 option. And obviously they just gave him the contract extension. They love him. But then you got Greg George, who is not, even though he has a ton of fans out there for whatever Dortch clubs out there, there are many out there, hasn't lived up to expectations. Michael Wilson, Zay Jones is there now too. They have some of those guys, but are you concerned about their receiving room? Would you have liked them maybe to add a receiver, even though we know this was kind of a down class after the first couple rounds?
Yeah, I think what I would like them to have done was get, middle round, speedy receiver. And in a sense, that's what they got with Zay Jones. So it's a bit of a mix up there. You got a cheap veteran receiver. There's still some vets on the market too that I think could help out in the slots, at least be, a reliable option where Dortch has been reliable, but hasn't really excelled. Michael Wilson, they believe is a starting wide receiver 2 for them. He just needs to keep growing. So I think every team that has a wide receiver room like this, you're like, okay, I wish they would have drafted someone. But at the end of the day, they have the 3 that they like, and Trey McBride is their top option anyways, at least with how they run this offense. I don't know if that's what it should be, but that's what it is.
Yeah, I know a lot of people had them taking an offensive lineman too early. Yeah. And just when you look at how they graded out last year, pass blocking wise, they were good. I think they do a good job of scheming the ball out of Kyler Murray's hands in a decent enough time. And I also think that while I am a Kyler Murray hater, pretty notably over the course of my football analysis career, I think he's kind of a mid-tier quarterback. He does bail out the offensive line when they let people through. He's got the ability to scramble and get out of dangerous situations. So I think that's where I understood not going at that. The wide receiver room, I mean, in doing this exercise and kind of putting these depth charts together, there are a lot of teams that have wide receiver rooms that look like this. And I don't know if that's just a shift in. And now I will say all of those teams have a guy like Trey McBride, maybe not as good as Trey McBride, but a guy that they can use as a pass catching, pass game weapon like Trey McBride. So I think that's a solid one too. Once again, though, I think they're putting a lot on Trey Benson's plate this year because James Conner was outstanding for them last year. I think they still want to give him the rock a lot, but they're going to need some level of involvement from the running back in the receiving game. And I think that's going to be part of Trey Benson's role this year. It's just interesting that in this running back class, they didn't take a shot at that. They didn't take a shot at wide receiver, but we're talking about them for a reason. And when we get into the defensive depth chart, it's like, okay, they have faith that this is going to work for them. Let's see what the defense can be now that we've added all this talent.
Yeah. This is a make and break year for Kyler. Like, let's be real. Kyler Murray, this is it. Like, I really feel like if he struggles again, I think this franchise is going to have to make some tough decisions for Kyler Murray because at a certain point, what's your ceiling with him, right? Not making the playoffs, getting close, contending, and falling down the stretch, which he's done. I do believe Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to have a big year. I've written about him. I've talked about him. I think that the way this offense looks, I think that they're going to play through him, hopefully more than what Randy expects. I like Trey McBride, but Marvin's your guy. Like, Marvin is the guy here that you need to kind of play through. And if they kind of can do that heavy play action sets, but also look for the wide receiver room, I think him and Kyler did kind of form a little bit of connection down the stretch. You saw it, those like 5-6 games, and it's the out of structure stuff that Christian talked about, him getting out of structure, and that's fine, and then having that chemistry with Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, where are you going? All right, where are we going to get you the football? That did improve, so we're going to see that. But to Christian's point, this defensive unit here could be top 5 in the NFL, I think, right, Randy? How are you feeling about this defensive unit here?
I mean, they reinvented, and they've already kind of started to cut bait with some of the overspends they did to try and retool everything on this defense. But there's a lot of guys on this team that, were later values that we liked in the last class, the class before. And then they really doubled down on the edge rushers for them this year, bringing in Walter Nolan to learn from Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson and rotate with them, and Bilal Nichols, who's a pretty good rotational guy. But I do look to see them kind of moving on from him shortly. But Josh Sweat, Justin Jones, Darius Robinson, Jordan Bird, Saban Collins, BJ Ojolari, possibly the deepest edge room class and the most versatile. They have the big edges. They have the speed guys. I think this is a really well-built defensive front, and that's perfect because they need some time to let the secondary really set itself. So I really like what they did there. Obviously, Will Johnson should be a starting quarter for them once we know everything was fully set. But Sean Murphy-Bunting, Starling Thomas, one of them are very able to move down the depth chart for Will Johnson. And like I said, I think Starling Thomas is more of a slot corner. Garrett Williams has been great there. And honestly, Max Belton kind of is a slot corner at times too. So they have drafted well in the room. It just they haven't been able to lock down the outside guy. I think Will Johnson gives you that, and that'll help just make this a much, much improved defense. You have athletic linebackers, and honestly, Baron Browning's yet another edge rusher for this team. So I really think with what they have in an uber athletic linebacker core with that defensive front, while you're still figuring out the secondary in its whole fleshed out besides Budda Baker, I think they'll be able to set up for success this year with a dominant defensive front. They were not good against the run last year or against the pass. I think they'll be good against the run at least this year.
Yeah. I mean, I think part of this too is we can take what they did at the draft and just take that at face value and say this team has improved quite a bit. But when you start to look at everything they added to this team, I mean, Josh Sweat, Calais Campbell, Dalvin Tomlinson are all new additions on top of, some of the other additions that they made via the draft. So I think that when you look at this defensive front, you say, okay, we're going to build it out like the Eagles did, right? So the Eagles Jonathan Gannon coming over from the Eagles, I think there's some of that mindset coming over, seeping into this team build where we're going to get our defensive front set, and then we're going to go pretty hard at our cornerbacks. Now, they did that with Will Johnson, but that's more of dart throw. From what we're hearing, as far as the knee not being in good shape, like that was more of a, all right, this guy, let's take a shot and hope that his knee kind of holds up. But I don't think that they feel like this cornerback room is completely rounded out. I think Garrett Williams has been awesome as a slot corner for them. I think they have flexibility to do some creative things with Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson on the back end there. I still don't love the linebacker room. I like Cody Simon as an addition, but when you look at just, I said it pre-draft, but like when Mac Wilson's one of your starters, I just don't feel great about the room. He's a fine backer, but it's not one of those rooms where you're like, oh, they have a good linebacking core. Akeem Davis-Gaither's been good. He was good in Cincinnati. He was fine, I guess, but like this is a lot of upside on the back end, but the front four, especially, they've got enough guys to rotate. They should always stay fresh. I think this is going to be a really good unit, a really surprising unit. I think when people look at what the Cardinals are and who the Cardinals are going to have to play too, they need guys that can get to the quarterback. I think they've got at least 4 that are going to be starting this year. But then Darius Robinson taking a step forward, Jordan Birch rotating in, Zaven Collins had some good snaps. And we haven't even factored in BJ Ojulari, who I think got hurt last year and didn't really play a whole lot. So this is just a room that I think they're going to be able to throw a ton at you. I think they're going to wreak some havoc. I think it's going to be difficult for opposing quarterbacks.
Yeah. All right. You ready? Next team? I can't wait to talk about this team. So let's jump to it here. The Dallas Cowboys, baby. We put them on the list. And after my initial haterade of what Dallas does usually, I've bounced back a little bit with what the Cowboys did on draft night. I think they did all right. If you would have flipped the first 2 picks, I would have been a little bit more happier. But hey, whatever. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what happened. So at number 12, they took Tyler Booker out of Alabama. At number 44, they took edge Donovan Ezeruko from Boston College. Siobhan Revel Jr., cornerback in round 3, East Carolina. Jaden Blue, round 5, running back out of Texas. They don't have a 4th-round pick for everybody that knows because they traded for Jonathan Mingo,
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, this one was Mingo. Last one was Lance.
Yeah, I almost screwed that up. So they just don't like the 4th-round picks there. Then they traded up for Shamar James, from Florida, linebacker in round 5. Round 6, Ojani Cornelius, Oregon offensive tackle. Jay Toya from UCLA in round 7. He's a defensive tackle. Then they have running back Phil Maffa, Clemson, in round 7. And then Tommy Aiken Bisote from Maryland, defensive tackle, 247. Did I mess that up?
Honestly, haven't heard it said out loud. So I think
you're okay there.
We're going to say that you were right. Yeah,
it was the no confidence that got me.
No. It's the pronunciation. I have a speech impediment. Don't make fun of me, Randy. All right. So that's their round 7. Now, just in general speaking here, I like what they did. They addressed a lot of needs outside of wide receiver, but similar to Arizona, we'll talk about probably the wide receiver room, what it looks like. But overall, I think that they address a lot of needs here. And in true Cowboy fashion, if Revel Jr. is healthy, I think he's the steal of the draft. But if he's not healthy, and he did look a little small in mini camp so far, they've been talking about that a little bit. That's going to be a big wild card there, right? But the other 2 picks I thought were smashed. I thought, maybe trading up for a Florida linebacker, even though he's only 20-ish years old, 21. He's one of the younger linebackers in the class. I think that was a reach. But overall, I thought they did well. I thought they addressed enough needs that they could kind of look at this team and think, hey, all we need to go do is trade for a wide receiver and maybe contend for the division. We'll see. But Randy, what was your take on this draft?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of already put it out there. Like we were desperately going for wide receiver for them for the whole time because it's such a big hole. Obviously, you have, a top 5 to 10 guy, however you see the wide receiver position in CeeDee Lamb. But besides that, you have a good tight end and then a bunch of vet running backs. And then, Turpin and basically nothing at wide receiver 2. It's just not what you really need from this team. Obviously, we'll get into that with the depth chart, but Tyler Booker, for what it is, I don't think you should go at 12. I agree with you, Kevin. I think if they flipped it, I would have been like, all right, solid. Makes sense to me because I do think Ezeruko can be that top-level edge that they really need to pair with Micah Parsons, and Booker does fill the hole that they have. He's a relatively good pass blocker with a decent anchor, and this is one of the worst blocking offensive lines last year. is not a great run blocking offensive line, but with a bunch of really bad running backs to run through that line last year. So it's a good move for them just to try and improve that line to that next level, to really catapult this stable running backs that they're clearly going to run through for this season until they figure out who's their guy moving forward. I like Jaden Blue. Obviously, Christian's the highest of any of us on him. I have my reservations. I don't think he can hold on the ball for anything, but when he does, it's electric. That's a real big problem. But I do think with what you have here with Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, he could easily carve out a role near the end of the season to be at least a pass catching back and really be a weapon for them. And maybe that's what this offense needs more than the next receiver. Obviously there's Keenan Allen, Mari Cooper out there. Maybe there's some reunion there trying to make this work, at least elevate it to some other level. But other than that, like I said, I love Ezraku. Shavon Rebel is one of my favorite corners, one of the best cover corners in the draft the last 2 years. Just hurts, and like you said, could be a little bit thin for what he needs to be at this next level. But this cornerback room has been really good, and they're really ball hockey. So getting a guy that's more cover and be able to sit on the outside, I think, is smart. I do think it's a capital, like that's a pick where you just capitalize on who's left on the board. And I do think they were probably taking a wide receiver there, in my opinion. And then you just see one of the best corners in the class, barring injury, sitting there, and you have a need there. I think you just have to take it. The rest of the draft, whatever to me. I think they just took upside shots at athletic people down the list, but we'll see. Like I said, I like the top. I just want it to be switched, and a wide receiver would make this a night and day draft class for me.
That's the main hang up, right? Is no wide receiver at any point, and 2 running backs, and one of them being Phil Maffa. Gross. But so one of the components that we haven't really talked about is with Brian Schottenheimer at head coach. He brought over Clayton Adams to be the offensive coordinator, and I think a lot of what they say they want to be multiple, but I think what they're going to be doing is a lot of gap scheme running. And so when you look across the board at what these guys do best, I think Guyton was athletic, but he really didn't move well. And on film, like he moves better in a power scheme type of situation. Same thing. Tyler Smith was one of those guys that I think could be multiple. I think he has been pretty good, but there's been some inconsistencies along this offensive line. So anchoring your offensive line with Tyler Booker, who will be a solid, leader in that room, which I know we hammered really hard pre-draft, but I don't hate it as much sitting with it for over a week now. And like you guys have both said, if you flip him and Ezraku, I think it makes sense and it's fine. And it's the same thing we did with the Lions when they drafted Jack Campbell and Jahmyr Gibbs, and then they came back around, and I don't remember who else they got in that draft, but it was a crazy class. And so I do think when you talk about, okay, they're going to go gap scheme runs and you're going to try to be physical with football, I don't necessarily know if you've got the running backs to do that. I think Jaden Blue is actually a better gap scheme runner than he was a zone runner. But I don't know necessarily if Jaden Blue is getting on the field a whole lot to start. I think it's going to start with Javonte Williams, Miles Sanders, with Blue sprinkled in. I think there's an interesting dynamic there where Blue might end up being the pass catching back right away because of how dynamic he is with the football. I think that could be good for them. My main question with this now, I think they needed to pour resources in on the defense. I think that was really important. But my main question with their draft is just why did they ignore wide receiver? They can't be comfortable with just CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Tolbert. And maybe they're really high on Paris Campbell. I don't think that's a good idea. Ryan Flournoy actually had some good snaps last year at times, but you're relying on a lot of different factors. And Jake Ferguson, we just talked about it with the Cardinals. Jake Ferguson is not the level of tight end that Trey McBride is, so I don't think you can build out this way. But once again, there's so many teams in the NFL right now that have wide receiver rooms that look like this. So maybe it's just the trend that we're about to see where they just have faith in their veteran quarterback to be good enough, and for those wide receivers to be good enough. So I don't know. The defensive side was more exciting to me, is what I would say.
The wide receiver thing, it's hard because when you look at the depth chart here, Jalen Tolbert, Gavante Turpin, who, hey, I like you, Turpin, but you're not that game-changing guy there. Ryan Flournoy, last year, some people really liked him, but he hasn't really panned out there. So you have to imagine they're going to go try to get it. But I keep hearing this thing like, oh, wide receivers attainable throughout the offseason. We don't – I don't think that's as true as like people say. Like I think PFF was talking about, I was listening to their podcast. Like, oh yeah, they could just go trade for. And I'm like, well, first of all, Tyreek Hill's contract is absolutely crazy because they mentioned Tyreek Hill. George Pickens. Do we want to put CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens in the same wide receiver room? Like, I just don't know if that's maybe, and with Dak Prescott, I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest fit for those guys. And yeah, maybe they have, but have you seen the track record of Dallas trading for wide receivers? It hasn't been the greatest in terms of what they've given up. So like, I question that. I think you hit the head. You hit the point on the head in terms of Jake Ferguson is not Trey McBride, right? Like we have not seen that from him. I actually think Luke Schoonmaker, and I used to make fun of him, is actually might be better than him, like just from a tight end perspective. So, but I don't know. The offense is a work in progress. I think Jaden Blue. I don't know, but I made a joke today in our Discord that Javonte Williams is going to average 2.9 yards per carry with 20 attempts. Like that's probably what's going to happen. Like, and he's just then they're going to throw the ball, 50 times, 45 times a game, maybe, which could, to who? CeeDee Lamb.
Yeah, that's the
That's it.
So that's the thing. Like that's where I'm at. Any final thoughts on the offense, Randy, before we jump over to the defense?
I don't know about trading for George Pickens, but look for someone. Someone's got to be mad during this training camp and off season. Like they need something. Even if it's just a speed guy, they just need some like injection to this wide receiver room besides Mingo.
Yeah, no, they do. All right. The one area where I am excited, defensively, they look really good. Like I think defensively where they can kind of bounce back. I think the biggest thing for me, and you kind of touched on a little bit though, is I think Randy did. Deron Bland and Trevon Diggs are fine, but Bland gets beat a lot. He struggles. He's a ball hawker. So is Diggs. And Diggs, the thing with Diggs, man, those injuries that he's had that he struggled with, like that's a big thing there. Bland is entering a contract year, so Revel I think really kind of sets himself up to kind of being that guy if he can really do it. They might be looking at his being the replacement there. Donovan Zaruko, I mean, we haven't talked about him much, but I mean that's legitimate, right? Like when you're thinking of him, he's clocked the most snaps of any edge in the 25 class, 90.7 PFF grade, 25% pass. I always mess this up. Pass rush win rate. That's because of my speech impediment, Randy. So he looked really good there. Like you have to love what he's done there. I think him with Dante Fowler, Micah Parsons, all of that defensive front, they did a great job defensively up on that defensive front. And I think if they secondary can bounce back this year, they're going to be in a lot of games.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, it's another team that has one of the most, at least name-worthy, deep edge rooms, in my opinion. We've seen flashes from Sam Williams. Marshawn Neal is one of, I know, my favorite edges of last year's class. I know Christian loved him too. And obviously you have Michael Parsons, who's, an alien. But Dante Fowler is still giving you reliable snaps over there, albeit it needs to be rotational. Ezraku can come in and be at least a rotational game changer for you. I think he does a good job on rundowns and on pass downs. I think he might step in as the rundown edge guy to give Fowler those breaks he desperately needs. And then you took an upside shot in Peyton Turner from another team that just takes upside shots on edge rushers every year. But that's such a strong room. If you can get anything from this D tackle room that you've drafted so much and invested so much in, I think this will be a good setup. And what really helps Bland and Diggs be good is that edge rush and the D tackle presence. If that front four can get pressure, guys like that can click and close and make plays. Again, like Kevin alluded to, though, can Diggs click and close like he used to in his, 10 pick season? I'm questioning that. I do love that Christian fixed a graphic mid-show. That's one of my favorite things to see. But besides that, Siobhan Revel, again, if we can get up to him being healthy in the middle of this season and getting ready to go, I think he'll be a great point for this team. Andrew Booth Jr., we haven't seen anything from, even though he should have been decent. Kerry Elam coming in to be the slot corner. Not loving that, but...
Well, I think Revel's going to be the starting slot once.
Yeah.
And the only reason I say that is I don't necessarily know if his change of direction is going to be there after this injury, but to stick with slot receivers, but to get him by the line of scrimmage too is really valuable. He's really, really good in run support. And when you have those guys that are playing on the back end, they're trying to click and close, make a play, create ball production. That's going to be the calling card of this defense is ball production. But when you have Revel that can kind of set the edge for you, that gives you the ability to get creative with that defensive front too, where it's like, okay, let's throw some stunts at these guys. We know we have Revel on the backside to cover up if they throw counters at us and things like that. I think that's gonna be the long-term plan because Elam at slot corner is not good. Sorry for interrupting, but it's just not.
No, you're fine. I mean, it's an upside shot for them. That's they took 2 or 3 like failed projects from other teams this offseason, and I think that's a smart move from a team that needs cheap options, especially at some valuable positions to try and retool. Again, you drafted some really good guys. I would argue Jack Sanborn and Kenneth Murray is probably the best linebacker duo they've had in 5 to 10 years. Sanborn's really reliable coming over with his old coach as well. I think he'll be an impact player. And Murray, when healthy and when he's in the field of the offense and able to play around a little bit more, I think he can be impactful for you too, which is good because I don't really love the safety pairing of Malik Hooker and Donovan Wilson, at least at this point. You know, a few years ago, I think I'd be a little bit better, but the secondary still got some overhaul to do for sure. But you made key investments, so I think it's a good draft for what picks you had for sure, and you tried to make a strength at edge rusher, which is smart.
Yeah, that was going to be my main thing. I mean, I think if Diggs can't play the way he did, I think you throw him at safety and feel okay about that too because of the way he plays, and maybe you just figure out the corner room after that. But the reason they're on this, most improved teams to me is, man, that defensive line is really, really good now. I'm not a huge Shamar James fan, but I also think you can use Shamar James as more of your pass rushing linebacker. He's a little undersized, but like he's quick. He can get to the quarterback. So I think you can get creative, and that's the main thing. Ezraku gives you that. Revel gives you that. I think just everything that they've done this offseason to improve that linebacker room, that's the main thing to me, is now, okay, maybe we don't have full faith that Mozzie Smith is going to hold gaps and really stuff the run because we want Osa playing vertical. We want him getting upfield, getting to the quarterback. Now we have guys that can actually rally and tackle behind that, whereas that's not what they had last year. So I think this team did an excellent job. A lot of people were worried about Ezraku and, will he be explosive enough to be impactful? I have no concerns. I think he's going to have fine sack production too, especially when you've got Osa and Micah Parsons and Dante Fowler. I think there's a chance that all 4 of those guys are on the field at the same time quite a bit this year. And I think Ezraku is like a sleeper to be rookie of the year, defensive rookie of the year, because I think there's going to be some opportunities for him. So I really like what they did. I wish they would have hit a wide receiver for sure, but I really like what they did overall.
Hey, you know what Jade Toya can do? He could just stand there and he's gonna take like 4 dudes with him. Like he's just gonna get into those offensive linemen, and that's why I think they draft them, because I have not been very happy with Mozzie. I don't know if they've been very happy with Mozzie or what's happened there, and I am just so glad we did not draft another defensive tackle for Michigan. Like I am just really, unless it was Kenneth Grant.
You could have ruined Kenneth Grant though, so it's a good thing you didn't.
It's true.
Yeah.
Basically, can't invest the Grant up there.
I love Kenneth Grant, so I'm glad you didn't find your way to the Dallas Cowboys, Kenneth Grant. All right, let's go over to the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete Carroll has his hands all in this bad boy. Like you could just tell. I mean, it looks like a Seattle draft a little bit with what they were trying to do there. At number 6, we know Ashton Genty, running back out of Boise State. Round 2, they took Jack Beck out of TCU. Darian Porter, Iowa State, in round 3. They had three third-round picks. So they took Darian Porter, Caleb Rogers, guard out of Texas Tech, and offensive tackle Charles Grant, William and Mary. Then they had 2 fourth-round picks. They took Dante Thornton, Tennessee wide receiver, and then Tonka Hemingway, great name, out of South Carolina. In round 6, they had 3 more picks. They took JJ Pegas. How do you say his last name?
That's Pegasus.
Pegasus?
That's how
Okay.
most people were saying it.
I almost said Pegasus because I was in a Hercules mold because I got little kids, but Pegasus out of Ole Miss, which I think is a good pick. I think that might be their sleeper pick in there in the day 3 guys. Tommy Mellett, Montana State wide receiver. QB Cam Miller out of North Dakota State. I think those 2 picks are just, I don't know. I think it was for vibes. And in a round 7, they took Cody Lindenberg out of Minnesota here. So, Randy, you're the resident Las Vegas guy. How you feeling? What's your vibe list here on this draft?
I mean, vibes are high. We talked. Christian said the Cowboys have possible defensive player of the year. We have what would be one of the running favorites as offensive rookie of the year, Ashton Jeanty, going there at 6. I mean, they need a difference maker in the running back room, period. And getting Jeanty, who is the biggest difference maker in this class, is just so much better. Obviously, he had like almost 50 more missed tackles than anyone else in college football last year. He gave the explosive plays that the Raiders desperately need from this position, which they haven't. I mean, Jacobs gave you a few of those, but he was more of a consistent runner and really carry the offense that way. I think Jeanty gives you a bit of both of that, and he can be a true difference maker. And then Jack Betch, again, this is the team that needed wide receiver help and then decided to draft one. And I think they got one of the better ones in this class, at least on the day 2 value. Really good Senior Bowl, played well all through that, made the plays he needed to, really elevated his stock. He's good in and out, and I just think he's going to be a good complementary weapon to what they have already. Jacoby Myers gives you all the consistency you want for Geno Smith. He can give you that Tyler Lockett feel. And then obviously Brock Bowers is your game changer in the passing game. And now you just give somebody else, gives you some speed and gives you some good route running to really help move this ball. But this is going to be a running team. So, and they were so desperate at corner. I'd say their cornerback room is worse than the Cowboys wide receiver room by far. And getting Darren Porter, who's just the pure Pete Carroll corner, the big, lanky, tall, and just able to make plays for a wide receiver, elite track background, speed off the deep end. I think he's going to be one of the best values for corner, but it's only going to be that way because of how poor this cornerback room is. I think he's going to be able to catapult to the starting lineup day 1 and make some impact plays. And then I'm glad they didn't invest super early on the offensive line because they did that last year, and I think they really hit on those picks, but then they doubled down in the late 3rd round here to get some high upside developmental guys to be rotational when you need it. And then hopefully, if you need those holes, you got Parham that's a free agent next year. You got 2 guys that might be able to switch into there. You're in a contract battle with your best offensive lineman right now. I think they're going to get that done. But at least you get Charles Grant maybe next year. He can give you at least some value there if you have to move on from Colton Miller. And then, you again, in the 4th round, you take a speed wide receiver. They took one of these last year as well. But 6'5", 200 pounds, 4.3 40. At least Thornton gives you some upside shots at wide receiver. I think they're just doing their best to make this offense a true weapon. And then they still got the cornerback that they desperately needed. The rest of the draft, like you said, bit of vibes picks. You got an all-name player in Tonka Hemingway, as Kevin alluded to. You got another D tackle to rotate in, which I think was needed. A good run defender. And then a developmental, Edelman type without the burst. Quarterback to wide receiver Mellett. Cam Miller, where a North Dakota State quarterback should probably go, in the 6th round. It does a good job of just moving the ball. I think he could come in and be a high-value backup, good runner. I think he can give you some package options as well where you need it because, Geno's not going to be running around like that. But at least if you come in with Cam Miller on some plays, I think he could be your quarterback sneak quarterback. He could give you some read option plays. Again, it's a way upside shot late in the 6th round, but and then you got a good run defender at linebacker. My biggest hang-up, me and Christian talked about this after the draft as well. There's a few times, like when they did take Rodgers, there were some linebackers there that I'm like, okay, well, you definitely could have went there or another corner and really helped out this defense. But I got it. I understood why you did it, but that's my only hang-up in this class is you let 2 of your starting linebackers go, and then you didn't take one until the late 7th.
Man, but I like Lindenberg. I think that's a really
I do too. It's just, come on.
I know. He fits that mold of a Pete Carroll linebacker, though, to the point that, they're going to develop him. I think my main thing with him is I don't know if he's strong enough yet. He's tall, he's lanky, he's fast. I just don't know if he's strong enough to shed tackles at the NFL level. And I think part of that is why he fell so late. I figured he'd be more like a 5th round pick. So I think that was good value at the time too. Man, I saw an interview. Someone shared it in our Discord of Eric DaCosta talking about how there's, the Ravens have done studies on, who's better at drafting, blah, 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 blah. Or someone else had done the study and they subscribe to it. And it's basically everyone drafts the same. There's literally no clear data that says this person's better than the other. There is some amount of luck. I mean, you look at this team specifically, they took Henry Ruggs. He looked like he was going to be good. Unlucky break for the team. Don't want to touch on that too much, but, but he also said the way to get ahead is to have as many picks as you possibly can, to have as many dart throws to get good players as you possibly can. And that is the one thing that the Raiders did excellently here. And I think they got some really, really good players with a lot of their picks, especially day 1 and day 2. Day 3, this is our 3rd team here, but like day 3, you're just hoping. But I think if you look at like their first day 3 pick was Dante Thornton. I thought that was a little high for him. I don't think he knows how to catch. That said,
he's got ceiling though.
If he learns how to catch, like, I mean, we comped him in the guide to Marquez Valdes-Scantling, and I think drafting Marquez Valdes-Scantling in the 4th round and I know he's a frustrating player, especially in fantasy circles when people play him, and that's a good pick in the 4th round. You have that type of guy. Now, Trey Tucker offers you some speed too, so it was kind of like double tapping speed. But I think Thornton is more of a vertical speed guy and Trey Tucker is a horizontal speed guy. So I think that's actually a decent shot on day 3. But the day 2 guys, Rodgers and Charles Grant, I mean, you can't get a better assortment of developmental offensive linemen at that range in the draft. Like that Charles Grant being there that late into round 3 was a little shocking to me because he is incredibly athletic. I know he played at William & Mary, and that's probably why he fell a little bit. But, man, like there's a chance that he competes with DJ Glaze at that right tackle spot, or they just try to develop him into being that Colton Miller replacement in a year or 2. And I think that there's like a decent chance that happens. Genty speaks for himself. I think that is your offensive rookie of the year. I think they're going to give him 8 million touches. But Jack Bech, I love that pick. The more I watched of Jack Bech throughout the process, the more I said he's just going to be a starting wide receiver at the NFL level. And if he goes to the right scheme, a lot of this stuff is where you land in your scheme fit. And there's a chance that Jack Bech is like leading all rookies in targets this year, especially with some of the other wide receiver landing spots. Like, and the fact that, yes, they're going to run the ball, but when you look at where the other targets are going, it's Brock Bowers, it's Jacoby Myers. Then what? Probably Ashton Genty, but there's a chance that Jack Bech is one of those, leading target getters for this team. So to get that many starting caliber players, or at least developmental guys that you could see being starters that early in the draft, I think the Raiders crushed it. And this is just the offensive side. I think they did a good job on the defensive side too.
I've loved Dante Thornton for like ever. I've always liked when he went from Tennessee. I was like, gosh, this kid is going to thrive. And then he just hasn't put it together. But I like what they've done. It's so funny because I don't want to offend anybody because I do like what they did, but they have a whole lot of mid at wide receiver, right? But it could work, unlike what we just saw with the last couple teams where they have an elite guy and maybe possibly an elite guy and at least an elite tight end. And you're looking at this, and they have Brock. We know that. They have Brock Bowers. He's their guy moving forward. But I like their pieces. They finally fit. Like the Raiders used to just put their square pegs into round circles and try it and like, hey, we're going to make this work. But this time it looked like they had a plan. The problem that I always have is Geno Smith is their quarterback. Like I hate Geno Smith. I'm just a Geno Smith hater. Go ahead. What?
Much better than they've had.
Yeah, okay. That's fine, and that's true. And they have a role. They're gonna just run the ball with Ashton Genty. They're gonna just basically dink and dunk people to death. I have a feeling. I think that's what it's gonna be, and that's probably what Geno Smith needs. So maybe on the flip end, maybe that they realize how to build around him, and I'm sure Carroll knows, like, hey, this is how we're gonna have to do this. So that's fine. I think offensively they did a great job. Offensive line is fine. right? Probably not a top 5 unit, but could be a top 15 unit, just enough to kind of, hey, support that group. And Ashton can make a lot of things look better than it is too. Ashton is going to be able to do that. Defensively, I know Christian touched on it a little bit, but what's your take on their defense, Randy, just as a whole here, like with what they have? We obviously have Max Crosby. Christian Wilkins is going to be great. Man, I just love that name, Tonka. That's my new favorite player. I'm getting a jersey. Tonka Hemingway. I don't even know if they sell your jersey, but
it's a wild name.
I'm finding you. Just putting Tonka on my back there. Obviously, they, when you're looking at their secondary, are you worried about that secondary? Because I think up front, they've really turned around. If Tyree Wilson can come all around too, I think up front they're okay.
Yeah, I would be more like ready for this cornerback room if clearly the personality wise and what the new scheme is going to be. Jack Jones didn't work out with Pete Carroll and what they wanted to do here, and then again you got rid of 2 productive tacklers at wide receiver at least, or at a linebacker. Sorry, and I just don't love that because you brought in Landon Roberts. I know that's kind of your guy. Cody Lindenberg, hopefully he can step up. Devin White has really not done much since his sophomore year in the NFL. He's been a downhill ever since. Hopefully Tommy Eichenberg can get on the field a bit more. That's my hope. So that's the good part there. I do like what they have at safety, though. I'll give them that. Isaiah Polomao really stepped up last year, and I think he could be I think he's the reason they allowed, oh my God, who was the safety? I'm just fully blanking.
The kid from TCU.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Murray.
We just talked about him last week. I'm pretty.
I know, but he's just so out of my mind because I'm like, screw him. Jeremy Chin's better, which isn't necessarily true by any means. But
he's close.
Last year was too close. That's the issue. But yeah. I think Polomao gave you enough with the free safety. It allows Chin to really come in to be the strong safety and then play in tandem where Morig and him were a bit of hat on hat. So I like the really developing that a bit more. So yeah, I'm upside there. I mean, I love Darian Porter. I think he can be a starter for you. I think he could play better than Stokes, honestly. And Darnay Holmes and Ja'Cory Bennett, clearly they've shown some flashes, and they clearly liked him enough to not overpay to keep their slot corner in the team. So I like what you got. Obviously, Max Crosby, Christian Wilkins, if they're healthy together this year, that's going to be a huge upgrade. They really didn't get that last year. But they did see Kuntz and Wilson really develop, in my opinion. So I think they're better. It's just the defense it felt better last year, but it really wasn't, I guess is how I would put it. And I'm not sure if it really improved. I just like some of the things they did.
Okay.
I'm a Darian Porter fan. I think that was an excellent pick. I think he's probably going to start for them, like you mentioned. I like Lindenberg as a developmental guy, but really I like bringing back Kuntz because last year he had the injury, so he didn't get to play. But the year before it was like 9 sacks, I want to say, and they really, really liked him. So I know a lot of folks were like, specifically right before the draft, they're like, this team's not taking Ashton Genty because he's not going to be there because the Jaguars are taking him. So they have to go edge because they don't have any edge rushers. And it's like, well, I mean, we need to let this play out. They brought back Kuntz for a reason. Max Crosby is one of the best in the NFL, if not the best in the NFL. I think you can actually make that argument. And Tyree Wilson has flashed a little bit. I think this allows you to play multiple too, where you can throw Tyree Wilson in at 3-tech and kind of let him get to the quarterback by using that length. I think there's some upside there. There's still some holes here for sure. I think a lot of what they focused on was making sure that they could, run the football and also build out that offensive line past this year. But some of the moves that they made here, I see the vision, I see the direction that they're going. And I think that's a good start.
Yeah, they need another offseason, clearly. I think they could go with that offense, depending on what they do with Miller next year. I think they really could be going for just a star receiver in the draft. I think they might be trying to trade up and do something like that. But again, the defense was where it was going to be kind of fun to see where they build, and they really didn't, fully. I mean, they took the one that they could and then just waited and built around the new quarterback, which I like definitely because the offense was so bad last year. It was smart, and then taking another speed wide receiver upside shot. I mean, the only reason I don't like him, Thornton, is because my comp to him was Clifford Franklin from The Replacements, and that's all I could think of. Just because he needs Stickum to actually catch the ball, but he's the fastest guy out there, and I really didn't love the pick.
Comp.
Yeah, that was the only part. But again, like Kevin said, the talent's there if he can just put it all together. And in the 4th round, that's an upside shot.
Man, next year we're putting that in the guide. We got to do like in movie and TV comps if we have them. Like just put it in the corner somewhere. Because that's
our
a
guy.
perfect.
We can do what
That's
we
a
want.
that's
I
a
was going to
perfect.
say, get rid of some of that white space. We're always increasing the.
I forgot. I forgot that we actually have creative control. We're not getting hamstrung. My bad. I forgot
Yeah,
about
right?
that. Yeah, no, that'll be a lot of fun there. No, so that's the Raiders. I think that when you think of the division that they play in too, I mean, they're clearly looking at this like, all right, how are we going to beat the Chiefs? How's the Chargers like looking at that secondary? I think there's definitely some moves you got to make in that, but up front is where you do it. Like up front is where you're going to have to kind of attack them there. And so I think it's an interesting battle with you looking at how these guys are building their teams. Like Raiders fans should have some optimism. Like you guys did great. I think that this is the first draft class that you've seen where we're not making fun of the Raiders for reaching, right? We're not making fun of the Raiders for doing this. And they have some vibe picks. That's the Pete Carroll way, baby. Like that's just what he does. All right. Last team that we want to mention. New England Patriots are on this board, and maybe some people might not agree in terms of them being up here. But the thing I will say about them is they had a lot of picks. So like Christian talked about, you just need as many picks as you can to kind of reload. And let's say this team needed to reload because they were really bad last year. And every time, I know this was not last year, but every time I see Mac Jones just get destroyed by the Raiders on that throwback that they lost 2 years ago, it just brings a little smile to me because after all that we've had to deal with the Patriots, it's just seeing that and seeing Mac Jones too. Remember, he was supposed to be the next Tom Brady. Don't forget that. Don't let people out there forget they told you that. So here's the new regime. New England, pick 4. They took Will Campbell, offensive tackle, he's just out there social media touring it up right now, just going out there talking about hunting behind the stadium. He's going to protect his quarterback. I didn't know he was dating his old college quarterback's sister. Did you guys know that? He's dating her. I saw that. No wonder why he was going to kill every single person that tried to touch him. He's trying to get in with the sister. Round 2, Travion Henderson, running back out of Ohio State. Round 3 had 2 picks here. Wide receiver Kyle Williams, center Jared Wilson, 2 very good picks. I think very, very solid. Round 4, they had 2 more picks. Craig Woodson, safety out of California, and then Joshua Farmer, Florida State defensive tackle. Round 5, they took edge Braden Swinson from LSU. Round 6, they took a kicker. And we love kicker picks. Andres Borregales from Miami, Florida. Then in round 7, they had 3 picks. They took Marcus Bryant, offensive tackle, long snapper Julian Ashby, and cornerback Kobe Minor there. Just generally speaking, Christian, thoughts on the draft picks, offense, defensively. What do you think they did the best job of?
Their first 7 picks were outstanding.
Pretty good, yeah.
I'm not a huge Kyle Williams fan, or I wasn't. I am now. Honestly, I think that fit with Drake May is perfect. And when we're talking about who got better, who is most improved, you have to look at fit. And I think Kyle Williams is in for a nice little opportunity here. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Jalen Polk went a little bit earlier. He'll probably have a shot. I don't know, man. It's a new regime coming over. I think Kyle Williams is probably slotting in as your starting Z wide receiver from the jump here. Will Campbell, it felt locked in all the way through. I think, if he doesn't work at left tackle, honestly, I'll be shocked. I think he's going to work at left tackle. I just think the feet are good enough. I think the length might be a problem against certain teams, but I think there are ways that you can mitigate that. One of those ways is to have Travion Henderson on the same side as Will Campbell, throwing dudes into the ground and helping in pass protection. So to get that at number 2, and I think you got your starting running back. I don't think this is Ramondre Stevenson's team anymore. I think Travion Henderson might not be the official starter, but I think he's going to be the most effective running back that they have. Jared Wilson, to me, was a top 32 player. I think he's a center. He's definitely got some work to do, but I think if Wilson reaches his upside, you've solidified your starting center for the next 10 years. Craig Woodson, very underrated player that I thought was going to go day 2. Joshua Farmer, I'm not a huge fan, but there were a lot of the NFL draft analysts that were like, yeah, this dude is a top 50 player. Braden Swinson, I am a huge fan. I think he's got incredible bend around the outside. I think certainly strength can be an issue, but I think overall those first 7 picks could not have been better. 2 of the final 4 were, special teams players, whatever. I don't care. That's, you got a kicker. I think I like Borregales. I think he had a really nice Miami career. I've never watched Julian Ashby play football. And to be completely honest, I've never studied long snappers, and I never will. I'll put that on record. But
whoa, take it
easy. You call yourself a draft analyst? You're not watching long snapper?
Yeah.
Who you yelling at anyway? Like, what's going on? Like, we weren't gonna be like, you can't.
The Cavs, man. I'm yelling at the Cavs. I'm still mad. But no, their first 7 picks were outstanding. I think this is exactly how to kick off a new regime. I think this is exactly how to get your star quarterback some help. And really, the first 4 picks were dedicated to that. And I think that's a really key component to saying that this is a most improved team.
Yeah,
Randy, let's. Go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I can't imagine how good this draft class would have been if the last coach didn't screw up and make them win the last game of the season and they'd have the top overall pick, because the haul they would have gotten to move back for Cam Ward would have been better than what the Browns got for Travis Hunter. So this draft could have been ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, what about the Browns trading up for Cam Ward? But
yeah, yeah, that's what the problem. Jimmy Haslam would be like, "Sell the farm, baby. We're getting Cam Ward here." That's kind of how it would have gone. When you look at their offense, so let's just go over their offense. I think up front, did they do enough for you, Randy? They got Will Campbell. They have Layden Robinson, Garrett Bradbury, Mike Onwenu. Wow, I messed that up. Morgan Moses. Like, how do you feel about their offensive line up front?
Yeah, I mean, they brought back Mike Onwenu last year to a good contract.
You guys got to watch the video on this one, folks. It's good stuff.
And that obviously, I love that pick to bring him back. He was your best player on offense at that point of your Patriots tenure, so that was smart. Bringing in Morgan Moses to really secure that right side of the offensive line with Onwenu was really good. They had to move on from Andrews. He's had a lot of injury stuff, some really bad injury stuff just over the last few years. So they tried and reinvent that center position. Garrett Bradbury, obviously down the stretch, didn't play great, but you bring in Jared Wilson to compete with him. I think you're going to get a quality starting center out of that room, easy. And then Sidney So's played some good snaps, bringing in Layden Robinson. Again, I think they wanted to bring in competition along this offensive line and some depth. I think they're going to have a really talented group going forward. They just need to, really secure probably 2 more spots in the next year's draft, a new right tackle, a new left guard. But I think they set themselves up for really good start. Like Christian alluded to, they went all in to give Drake May the best chance they could. And Kyle Williams, Matt Collins and Stephon Diggs gives you just an enormous boost to the wide receiver room that was just 6 slot receivers. And now you bring in some speed guys, you bring in a dominant wide receiver 1, albeit, at the back end of his career and coming off a major injury. Hopefully he can just stay on the field this year. It'll be a big boost to this team. But, all the receivers they drafted last year, they're going to get a shot. Demario Douglas has been consistent. Kendrick Bourne's had some good games. Everyone's going to get a shot. But I do agree with Christian where I think Kyle Williams and Stephon Diggs going to be consistent options on the field every time. And then you have your reliable tight ends. I love what they did. I think Henderson, as Christian put it here on the depth chart, is already their starting running back. Again, I don't think he's getting 20-plus touches a game, but I think he's going to be a vital part of this team. And this is clearly a team built by Vrabel, I think is how I'd put it. I think this is telling the GM to just kind of sit down, and Vrabel said, I'm going to fix this, and we're going to get ready. We're going to run the ball. Drake May is going to be successful. I think they did a good job.
Yeah. Kayshon Boutte had almost 600 yards last year. So
Shouldn't have, but he did.
No, but and really that stretch like the last 3 to 5 weeks, around there. I just remember him and Drake May had a connection. The reason I bring that up, though, is he's not very good. Kyle Williams is that role now. And so now you have a bit more upside in doing what Drake May likes to do, which is throw go balls down the sideline. That's how Booty was winning quite a bit. So I'm super thrilled with what they did for this offense. I'm just happy to see that Drake May has a shot. I'm happy for our boys Caleb Williams and Drake May. We didn't put the Bears on here, but
shocker, I know.
Well, because their day 2 and 3 of the draft sucked. But not true. Their day 3 just sucked. But what we've seen these teams do for their young quarterbacks is smart. It's good team building.
I think offensively, I think Travion's their guy. I think that you're looking at a guy that's going to get 20 touches, 25 touches a game. That's going to be legitimate. And again, he is one of the best pass blocking backs in the class. So that's going to help out Drake May too, right? These are things that we talk about. They do need Stephon Diggs has not moved the needle for me. Demario Douglas is fine. Kyle Williams is fine. At some point, they're going to have to find a wide receiver 1, right? Like they're going to have that replacement for Diggs. But I thought they addressed enough needs where they'll be competitive this year. Now for offensively, I think they have Drake May. If he takes that next step, I think they're right there. And I think in that division, outside the Bills, I don't know. I think that it'll be interesting. I think that they can. I think it's one of those things where they're going to win some games they probably shouldn't, right? And they're competitive there. Defensively, when you're going over what they did, I think Joshua Farmer was a pretty good pick. I really liked that pick in terms of what they were trying to do on defense from the defensive tackle behind Christian Barmore. I don't have a ton of question marks defensively. They definitely got to improve, and you're expecting that, right, with their head coach and what that system is going to look like. So overall, I thought they did good. Are you surprised, Christian, about Kobe Minor dropping already to 7th?
Not really. I just thought on tape he was just fine. And honestly, I don't think he's gonna get on the field for them either. This starting 3 corners is one of the better ones in the NFL. Like this Patriots defense looks like the Titans defense that Vrabel really succeeded with, in that you have 2 really good safeties that I think are going to be super multiple. I think you're going to use Duggar in that Kyle Hamilton like role. Once again, I think they got away from that a little bit last year. But to add Carlton Davis to this room, Marcus Jones hasn't really fulfilled his full potential. He's dealt with some injuries here and there as well. But I think when you have this starting 5 in the secondary, a lot of the other stuff will come to fruition. I think adding Milton Williams to this defensive front is probably the most critical component to that. Christian Barmore getting healthy and getting on the field will be important to them. But Joshua Farmer can probably step in and hold his own. And to get that in the 4th round like they did is really impressive. Instead of just adding Caleb on Chason, you added Braden Swinson, who's probably a better version of Caleb on Chason. And you added Harold Landry, who had a previous relationship with Vrabel. So there's just a lot of really good stuff on this defense to where I'm like, okay, if I see what they did on offense, I look at the upside of this defense. I mean, this looks like a 9 to 10 win team to me on paper. And just like, I mean, they should have been picking 1st overall, like you mentioned. So that's how drastic the change has been. And that's not just from the draft, but it's just really a single offseason of a retool, rebuild type of deal. And that's impressive to me.
Yeah, I mean, it was a bad roster that was plagued with injuries too. Obviously, Barmore being one of the biggest. Peppers was out most of the year as well, so that did make Duggar have to kind of switch up the role to make this work. But yeah, getting in Swinson, who was probably, most people thought would go day 2, especially near the end of the draft cycle. Getting him in the 5th to pair with this room is really impressive. The linebacker room is really deep for this team, which has not been the case for a long time. Jack Gibbons and Spillane coming over to really just replace as the new starters, I think was very smart because they really didn't get a lot of what they needed in this linebacker room last year. They got a quarter 2 that can actually play outside. to allow Marcus Jones to be a pure slot and really dominate out there. I think this is just a good move overall. I think this is a, around 12 to 17 defense, and you're probably going to get about the same from the offense this year. If not, you hope better, but I think it's middle of the road both ways, and it's a building season for a new coach. I think, like you said, Christian, I think this is going to be 8 or 9 win team, and all those close games, you're now going to have those chances to win because you have Vrabel.
Vrabel makes a huge difference. I mean, Vrabel is that guy for them. Like that's really where it sets the tone there. I think he's worth a couple wins. I think that
culture.
He's the type of guy, and people just say culture, but he's the type of guy that means it. And I think that he can really kind of elevate this team on both sides of the ball. And I think that he can do it. Now, that'll wear thin quick. We've seen it before with him. So hopefully the first 4 or 5 seasons he'll be there. Oh, what ran?
I mean, the Titans' tenure, it crashed and burned, but that was more of a rift between the front office and him, and them trading away his best weapon for no reason. Like it was a big rift, and then there's stuff, the quarterback situation, and it started to kind of go awry. But the defense was always there, even with lesser pieces.
Well, and they then got rid of the front office. The Titans have some ownership problems there. I think that was where most of the rift was. And Vrabel having a relationship with the Patriots, I think, does make an impact on how long his tenure can be. And tying himself to Drake May, I think, was a pretty smart move, personally and financially.
Not a bad person to tie yourself to from all those. Yeah, no, I don't want to think Tennessee's ownership group is a mess. Like I'm not trying to compare that at all to the Patriots because I get it. I mean, outside of some orchid massage parlors, all accounts, it looks like Bob Kraft and F. Scotts have done an amazing job in terms of culture building and everything there. So like that's going to fit much better than Tennessee for sure. All right, well that's it, boys. We got our 4 teams that we like the most. We're excited about. Next week, we're going to be talking about schemes, kind of going into what we saw from scheme changes, how it fits some of your best players out there from a fantasy perspective and a team building perspective. But I do want to plug our rookie guide before we get out of here. Go look at our links below if you're watching on YouTube. It's over on our Patreon. You can find Substack. There's a bunch of different ways. If you don't want to join our community, which totally get, I mean, it is what it is. I know some people don't want to do the monthly subscription-based stuff. You can just buy it pro bono. I don't even know how to say it, but you can just buy the shit. Like, so it's $15 a la carte. That's what I'm looking for. Pro bono. I'm in some weird legal battles with myself in my head right now. That's free. This is why I did not get a master's degree in anything else but education. That's awkward. So we're going to be looking at this. You can buy a la carte on our Patreon. You could go get it for $15 and just support us. If you watch any of our stuff, if you use any of our stuff, you definitely can just support us there and buying it for us. We put a lot of time and effort into this thing. We do truly care about the product that we put out. So we thank you guys for everybody that's bought it so far, is a part of our community already. Thank you guys. And we appreciate you guys. And we'll check you guys on next week's show.